5 ships set out, only one returned. This is the story of history's greatest maritime adventure. A journey where success and tragedy intertwined, where courage and ambition pushed the limits. Today we will discover together one of humanity's most daring endeavors. The story of a man who crossed oceans, sailed into the unknown, and ultimately became legend. Tonight's guest is Ferdinand Magellan, the hero who tried to circumnavigate the world and gave his life for this cause. Before we start the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and mention in the comments where you're following us from. Now let's journey to Portugal in 1480. Ferdinand Magellan was born in 1480 in Sabrosa, a small town in northern Portugal. His father, Pedro de Magalhães, was a minor nobleman and served as the town's mayor. His mother, Alda de Mesquita, was the daughter of one of the region's established families. Like the Vespucci family, the Magellans also had a modest but respectable position. Young Ferdinand's life changed dramatically at 12 years old. His family sent him to Lisbon, and he began working as a page in Queen Leonor's court. This period was like a school for him. He studied maps in the court's great library, learned navigation techniques, read ancient texts about astronomy. Portugal was the most advanced country in seafaring at that time, and young Ferdinand grew up right in the middle of this atmosphere. During his years in court life, he heard stories of great explorers. Vasco da Gama's arrival in India, Pedro Álvares Cabral's discovery of Brazil, Alfonso de Albuquerque's conquests in the East. These narratives painted pictures of distant lands in his mind, announcing the call of unknown oceans. In 1495 he entered King Manuel's service, and his real adventure began this way. For 15 years he served in Portugal's eastern colonies. In 1505, at 25 years old, he joined the great expedition organized to establish Francisco de Almeida's Viceroyalty of India. This fleet of 22 ships had set out to strengthen Portugal's presence in the East. During his years in India, Magellan became a true warrior. He fought against the Ottoman and Egyptian navies in the Battle of Diu. This victory consolidated Portugal's dominance in the Indian Ocean. He took part in expeditions to Sofala and Kilwa. He was also present at the conquest of Malacca. This city was the most important spice trade center of the time, and its capture was strategically very important for Portugal. In Malacca, Magellan formed a very important friendship. He met a navigator named Francisco Serrao. Serrao would later reach the Moluccas, called the Spice Islands, and from there send letters to Magellan, providing valuable information about these legendary islands. This information would play a critical role in planning the future great voyage. Also in Malacca, he purchased a slave named Enrique. This young man was perhaps of Malay or Sumatran origin. From then on, Enrique would be Magellan's loyal assistant, embarking with him on countless adventures. Unfortunately, historians cannot fully trace Enrique's story, but it is certain he played a very important role in Magellan's life. When he returned to Portugal in 1513, Magellan was a 33-year-old experienced sailor, but he was immediately called back to service. This time, he would participate in the siege of Azamor Fortress in Morocco. An event he experienced here changed the course of his life. During combat, he was wounded in the leg and remained lame for life. This physical handicap did not slow him down, but became part of his identity. Another event during the Moroccan mission had much more serious consequences. He faced accusations of theft. His innocence was proven, But this incident drove a wedge between him and King Manuel. He was no longer close to court. His future was uncertain. It was at this point he decided to realize the great project in his dreams. Magellan had a plan he had been formulating in his mind for a long time. He wanted to reach the Spice Islands by going west. This idea seemed crazy, but was theoretically possible. The world was round, and if you sailed west far enough, you would eventually reach the east. Columbus had discovered America, but that place was not Asia. Balboa had seen the Pacific from Panama. So it was theoretically possible to reach the Pacific by passing south of South America, and from there arrive at the Spice Islands. He presented this plan to King Manuel. He proposed 3 times, was rejected 3 times. The king no longer trusted Magellan and did not want to support his projects. This rejection was devastating for Magellan, but at the same time pushed him to new pursuits. In 1517, he made the historic decision. He renounced Portuguese citizenship and emigrated to Spain. He settled in Seville and decided to become Spanish. He grew close to the family of Diego Barbosa, a Portuguese merchant. He married Barbosa's daughter, Beatriz. This marriage brought him not only happiness, but also opened doors to the Spanish court. Beatriz was a beautiful and intelligent woman. She understood and supported Magellan's plans. Soon they had a son. They named him Rodrigo. Family life brought Magellan peace, but his great dream still remained alive. Now he was determined to carry out this project in Spain's name. In 1518, he found the opportunity to meet with Spanish King Charles I. The young king listened to Magellan's plan with great interest. Reaching the Spice Islands from the west could bring tremendous advantages for Spain. It could break Portugal's monopoly in the east, open new trade routes for Spain. The king approved the project and promised to provide 5 ships and sufficient personnel. Preparations lasted a year. 5 ships named Trinidad, San Antonio, Concepcion, Victoria, and Santiago were equipped. A crew of approximately 270 people was gathered. Most were Spanish, but there were also Portuguese, Italians, Greeks. An Italian scholar named Antonio Pigafetta also joined the voyage. He would keep detailed journals of this legendary adventure, and thanks to him we can know today what happened. Magellan was appointed commander, but his relationship with Spanish captains was never good. They did not trust him, could not accept a Portuguese holding such an important position in Spain's name. Several captains, especially Juan de Cartagena, were openly against him. This tension was giving signs it would lead to major problems before the voyage even began. On September 20th, 1519, they departed from the port of Sanlúcar de Barrameda. The first goal was to sail south and find a passage south of South America. No one knew how difficult this would be. No one was aware they were at the beginning of an adventure that would last 3 years. The first months passed relatively smoothly. They crossed the Atlantic, reached the Brazilian coasts. They anchored in Rio de Janeiro and refreshed supplies. They encountered native peoples. Pigafetta describes in detail the lifestyles and cultures of these people in his journal. These encounters were surprising for Europeans because they were meeting a completely different world. The southward voyage continued. They explored the mouth of the La Plata River, but this great river was not a passage that would take them to the ocean. They had to search further south. The weather was getting colder. Storms were intensifying. Grumbling among the crew was increasing. In March 1520, they anchored for winter at San Julian Bay. This decision would trigger one of the voyage's most critical moments. Magellan decided to ration supplies. The crew reacted to this. The Spanish captains decided to take advantage of this opportunity. Juan de Cartagena, Gaspar de Quesada, and Luis de Mendoza started a mutiny. They seized 3 ships and gave Magellan an ultimatum. They said they would now take command, change course, and return to Spain. This situation was a vital test for Magellan. If he could not regain his authority, both his own life and the great discovery dream would end. Magellan showed he was a great leader in this crisis. He made strategic moves with the ships that remained loyal. Together with loyalist crew, he tried to retake the rebel ships. Conflicts broke out. Blood was shed. Mendoza was killed. Quesada was executed. Cartagena was later abandoned on the coast. This harsh intervention also sent a message to the rest of the crew. Magellan was determined, and no one could challenge him. But the mutiny's price was heavy. The Santiago ship sank due to bad weather. The crew was saved, but they had lost a ship. Morale was damaged. Trust was shaken. Despite this, Magellan decided to continue on his way. In October 1520, with spring's arrival, the southward voyage continued, and finally they found what they were looking for. South of Patagonia, among stormy seas, a passage appeared. This narrow waterway would take them from the Atlantic to the Pacific. But the passage was so narrow and dangerous that crossing it carried great risk. Magellan was determined to take this risk. The ships entered the passage one by one. Throughout the passage they saw fires lit by native peoples, which is why they named the region Tierra del Fuego, meaning land of fire. Advancing through the passage's winding, narrow channels was nearly impossible. Rocks, whirlpools, sudden winds constantly threatened the ships. During this time, another disaster occurred. The San Antonio ship secretly mutinied and turned back. They took Captain Alvaro de Mesquita prisoner and set out toward Spain. This was a great loss because San Antonio was the fleet's largest ship, and most of the supplies were on it. Now only 3 ships remained, but Magellan still continued. On November 28, 1520, they finally emerged into the Pacific. This was a tremendous achievement. For the first time in world history, a crossing from Atlantic to Pacific had been made. Magellan named this ocean Pacific, meaning peaceful ocean, because when they first saw it, the waters appeared very calm. But this calmness would be deceptive. Magellan was very wrong about the Pacific's dimensions. He thought they would reach Asia in a few days. But before them stretched the world's largest ocean. For 3 months and 20 days, they would not be able to land, would sail in open sea. This 3-month journey was hell. Supplies ran out, water spoiled, diseases began. Scurvy ravaged the crew. About 30 people died. From hunger, they ate leather pieces, rat carcasses. Pigafetta describes these terrible days in detail in his journal. People were losing hope, coming to death's threshold. Finally, they reached the Mariana Islands. This place was like paradise. Fresh water, fruit, vegetables. But they had problems with the native people. A small boat was stolen, and Magellan reacted harshly. They began burning houses, killing people. This ruthless behavior showed the colonial mentality of the era. In March 1521, they arrived at the Philippines. These islands were unknown lands for Europe. Magellan noticed something interesting here. His slave Enrique could speak with the local people in his own language. This was most likely Malay, because this language was used as the trade language in the region. According to some historians, If Enrique was later able to return to his homeland in Malacca, he could be the first person to circumnavigate the world, because he had previously sailed from east to west with Magellan. However, there is no definite proof of this, and Enrique's fate retains its mystery. In the Philippines, Magellan made a strategic mistake. He began interfering in local politics. He made an agreement with Humabon, the ruler of Cebu Island, made him accept Christianity. Then he offered to fight against Humabon's enemies. This was a big error. Magellan was now trying to be not just an explorer, but a conquest and conversion missionary. On April 27, 1521, he faced Lapu-Lapu's warriors on Mactan Island. Magellan thought European weapons would easily triumph. It was a terrible mistake. Filipino warriors were very well organized and determined to defend their own land. The battle was a disaster for Magellan. According to Pigafetta's writing, native warriors wounded him in the leg with a poisoned arrow, in the face with a bamboo spear. Later, he was struck in the left leg with a large sword and fell to the ground. He breathed his last on Mactan sands. "Our mirror, our light, our comfort, and our true guide," writes Pigafetta. The great commander was dead. Magellan's death was a great shock for the expedition. A leadership crisis began. Relations with Filipinos deteriorated. In fact, 27 Spaniards were massacred at a banquet. Now only 2 ships and fewer than 100 crew remained. Juan Sebastián Elcano took command. He was also an experienced sailor, but not as charismatic as Magellan. Despite this, he decided to complete the mission. The Concepcion ship was set on fire because it was too damaged. Only Trinidad and Victoria remained. In November 1521, they finally reached the Spice Islands. This was the real purpose of the discovery. In the Moluccas, they loaded cloves and cinnamon. These spices were worth gold in Europe, but the Trinidad ship also remained behind due to repair needs. Only Victoria continued westward. Elcano faced another great challenge. He had to cross the Indian Ocean and round the Cape of Good Hope. This route was under Portuguese control, and there was constant risk of capture. Moreover, the ship was in ruins. The crew was exhausted. Throughout the journey, deaths were constant. Hunger, disease, fatigue. They were advancing only thanks to favorable winds and the crew's incredible endurance. They seemed lost among the vastness of the Indian Ocean. On May 6, 1522, they passed the Cape of Good Hope. Now they were on the way home, but disaster was not yet over. On July 9th, they stopped at Cape Verde. Here they noticed something strange. According to their journals, it was July 9th, but the islanders said it was July 10th. A day had been lost. Because they had circumnavigated the world for the first time, they had not noticed this time difference. Today, we know this as the international dateline. At Cape Verde, the Portuguese detained 13 crew members. Victoria barely escaped. Now, only 18 people remained. On September 6th, 1522, they returned to Sanlúcar de Barrameda. 3 years later, they had returned home. These 18 people had completed history's first circumnavigation adventure. In Victoria's hold were valuable spices, but the real value was this achievement. The world was truly round and could be circumnavigated by sea. Magellan's vision had been realized, but he himself would not see it. Magellan's story is an epic of courage, determination, and sacrifice. He followed a dream and gave his life for it, but his legacy is eternal. The Strait of Magellan bears his name. The Magellanic Clouds are named in his honor. NASA's Magellan spacecraft has followed in his footsteps. This adventure also shows the power of humanity's courage and curiosity. To venture into the unknown, to push boundaries, to attempt the impossible. Magellan did this and changed the world. Even though he could not complete the journey himself, the process he initiated changed the course of history. Ferdinand Magellan is not just an explorer, but also a pioneer of globalization. Thanks to him, the world truly united. Oceans became bridges, not barriers. This brave Portuguese's legacy continues to live in every new page we open, in every new thing we discover.